What is going on, everybody? So the iPhone XS just came out literally yesterday, and I finally got my hands on one. I had to go to the Apple store and all that stuff, but they ran out of the XS Max, so I actually had to go to a different store to pick it up, but it's all good. I still got it. Now, as a whole, a lot of people will probably look at this phone and think it's not a huge upgrade, and I do believe that if you have an iPhone 10 or something like that, you should probably stay where you're at. But if you have like an iPhone 6 or 6 Plus or even a 6S, it might be a worthwhile upgrade for you guys to upgrade. You guys might be wondering if you want to update or not, and I think this is where this phone kind of lies, you know. If you have an iPhone 10, definitely stay where you're at, but overall, from the iPhone 10, this is not a humongous upgrade. In performance, it did increase a little bit. The camera did get a slight increase, but I mean, overall, I think it's a very minimal upgrade in a lot of ways. The screen still stays at the 5.8-inch mark. It's the same resolution, 1125 by 2436, and the same PPI 458. So the screen's gonna look pretty much the same. Apple did say that it did increase a little bit, maybe I think the brightness a little bit, but overall expect the same type of panel. What they stated from their keynote was that the glass did get a little bit more resistant, so if you drop it, the phone will be able to handle it a little bit more. Maybe that's a little true, but you should always throw a case on your phone and glass screen protector. We still have Force Touch and all that stuff on this phone. The iPhone XR got rid of it, but luckily we still have it on this. Now, when this phone started off, it actually started off getting iOS 12, and this phone is literally just getting started with software updates, and it runs iOS 12 very, very nice. And I don't know if the iPhone 10 can support this, but for the iPhone XS, whenever you go into the multitasking panel and all these other things, the haptic feedback is actually so nice. Like, it's just kind of like a little like touch every single time you do something. And I tried to activate it on the iPhone 10. Maybe you are able to, but I just don't know how to. I went through settings, I went through sound and haptics and all this stuff. I couldn't find it, but the iPhone XS has a really nice little touch with that. Now, the iPhone XS does come in a new gold color, which is very, very nice. I freaking love this thing a lot. Thank God they didn't put a white notch on it. The black looks seamless with it, and I really like this gold color. The slight little main difference with this body, there's actually two of them, is actually one with the bottom is the speaker. They had to take out a little bit of the speaker to put in the antenna band, but the right side was never a speaker anyway, so that's really not that humongous of a deal. I know a lot of people are kind of mad about it, but I mean, I don't remember even the last time I looked at the speakers. You know, I don't even look at it when I'm like putting in the charging port, so it's really not that big of a deal to me. I know that's kind of like an un-Apple thing to do, but it doesn't really affect me too much, and I really wish they could have taken that part out completely and put a bigger battery in or something, like, I don't know, but that's really my opinion on it, and it doesn't really affect me. But the thing that really annoys me a lot is the camera on the back. That thing, they made it just a little bit larger, and just large enough so that when you put a case on, it's just a little awkward and it doesn't fit perfectly on it, and it looks really weird. I showed this in my unboxing video. Like, it's just so strange. I wish they never did that. I feel like it's kind of petty for them to do that just so they can make more money off the cases. There's really no other reason they couldn't have just kept it the same size or anything like that. I mean, if you think about it, the iPhone 6S was an increase. Almost every single S series, you were able to use the case before to use on the same phone after, but I don't know why they did it here. And it's such like a minimal upgrade that it's just so random that they did that. I feel like it was harder for them to increase the camera than just keep it the same size, but man, that's just my opinion. Now, as far as the performance, I mean, it has the Apple A12 chip, it has a hexa-core processor, and 4 GB of RAM, which is actually an increase from last year. So not only did we get the new chip and all that, but we do have an extra gigabyte of RAM, which is pretty incredible. I still think 3 GB of RAM is a lot. I still think 2 GB of RAM is pretty sufficient on iOS. For Android, it's a little bit different story. But and in terms of this phone, I mean, I'll tell you right now, it's such a fast phone. Like, it's amazingly speedy. You can do anything you want with it. I ran a benchmark and I got over 300,000, if that means anything to you. But I mean, everything will run fine. Performance, multitasking between heavy apps, I'm talking like extreme heavy apps, multitasking between games, going from watching a video to listening to music and all these other things, like it'll be able to handle it just fine. If you're spending almost over $1,000 at this point for a phone like this, I mean, it's going to be top notch. And in terms of the performance, I mean, it's very, very good. But with that being said, the iPhone 10 was never slow either, and they're both very fast phones. The iPhone XS is probably faster. I mean, it has to be faster, but if you're not comparing them side by side, I don't think you're going to notice that humongous of a difference, I'll be honest. And that's kind of what I'm trying to get at, is if you're not comparing this phone right next to another phone, like an iPhone 8 or iPhone 8 Plus or an iPhone 10 for that matter, the iPhone XS is definitely faster. But even if you're saving like a second every time you open an app, which is not, it's probably less than that, is that worth the upgrade to you? And for me, not really, but for you, it might be. If you're coming from like an iPhone 6S, even an iPhone 7, then I mean, its choice is yours. But in terms of the performance, this phone kills it. Gaming, every single thing. I think honestly, one problem is maybe it's a little too fast. Like when I was playing Nova, it seems like it just like handles it so well. well that it kind of like moves too fast in the game, so it's kind of hard for me to like keep maneuvering around. It's fast, but it's not necessarily smooth, if that makes any sense, but it's not choppy either, because when you play games like this and Real Racing 3 and these heavier intensive games, what they do is they run a benchmark in the back end, so then it kind of ups the graphics or lowers the graphics depending on the game and depending on the phone you're using and if it can handle it. So every time you play Real Racing 3 or Nova, it always ups the graphics to the highest quality. So even on Real Racing 3, you might see there's like a couple glitched frames, but that's mostly because, you know, it's up to the highest maximum graphic capacity. If you took the graphics from like an iPhone 6 and put it on here, it'll be able to play it so fast, like you can't even like look at it because it's like you're already done with it. So that is my 2 cents of the day, dude. Performance is awesome. You're never gonna have a problem with it for at least like 3 or 4 years. So it's pretty insane how fast phones are getting now. Now moving to a little bit of a stranger topic, but not really. The cameras, I mean, we saw the dual camera setup on the back. Like I said, they did increase it a little bit. I think a lot of the changes they did with the camera were more so software, because they added in the smart HDR, which is really nice. And it basically adds more photos into one single photo and takes the best features out of all those photos and combines it into one. And I mean, it's a very good camera. I don't really have anything bad to say about it. I mean, you saw portrait mode, portrait lighting, all these different features. You can shoot 4K videos at 60 frames per second and 1080p videos at up to 240 frames per second. And I'm planning on making another separate camera video going really in depth about this camera and kind of testing it a little further and even comparing it to other cell phone cameras. That's the first time I said cell phone in forever, but the resolutions for the camera stayed the same. You could shoot 4K at 60 frames per second on the iPhone 10 as well. Like I said, if you're not comparing this phone side by side with the iPhone 10, honestly, like I don't see that humongous of a difference. And with that being said, I'm not saying this camera is horrible. This camera is very, very good, but so was the iPhone 10's camera. And is this camera better? Yes, probably it is better. It has to be better because they put a different sensor in there and all that stuff. And I want to believe it is better, but I am going to do a comparison between the iPhone 10 and 10s. So I guess we'll see there, but photos are very nice. They're vibrant, but even in weird lighting locations, it's not even that bad, honestly. I found it to be very, very good. You still have the telephoto lens so you can zoom in further. You have the dual tone flash, all those things, and you're never really going to have a problem with the camera. And portrait mode is still super awesome. And one cool thing they did was with the front camera, actually, it's still 7 megapixels, but they upped the video resolution a little bit. Not the resolution, but the frames per second. So before we could only shoot at 1080p at 30 frames per second, but now we can shoot 1080p at 60 frames per second. So a little bit of an upgrade there. For a lot of people, that might seem kind of like needless, like, oh, I wish we could do 30 frames, but I think once you start getting used to 60 frames, I mean, that is the future, and that's really cool that Apple put it in now. And I couldn't find a way to put it back to 30 frames per second. I don't know if you are able to, but I'm fine with 60 frames. I think it just adds a little bit more memory to the photo, so it takes up more space, but even at that, it's not that big of a deal. Video quality is amazing as well. Like, these cameras are getting so good now. I'm really curious on what they're gonna do like 2 years, 3 years, 5 years down the line. And I think cameras are so good that maybe they should start focusing on other aspects of the phone. I'm not saying they should go away from fixing the cameras and upgrading them, but I think taking their attention away from there and maybe going and looking at battery life or something like that, because that's one thing that Apple and a lot of companies tend to do is, you know, they increase the size, or they make a new battery size 1 year and then they decrease it and they just keep decreasing it. And that's what Apple did on this case. We had a 2715 mAh battery on the iPhone 10, but when they upgraded to the iPhone 10s, they actually decreased it down to a 2658 mAh battery. Is it a humongous decrease? Not really. I mean, I'm surprised it only went down like 50 milliamps or whatever that is. It's not that much if you think about it in the long term, but I mean, at the end of the day, they still decreased it. They didn't keep the same size battery. They did promise that the battery life did expand or extend up to 30 minutes more. That's very based on your usage. I mean, if I took my same usage I did on my iPhone 10 and did it on the iPhone 10s, I mean, I'm sure I would get the same. But what I'll say is the iPhone 10s battery is not as good as the iPhone 10 as of this point, because you have so many variables kicking into it. But that's not to say that iPhone 10s battery is horrible. What I'm saying is that you have better performance, you have more RAM, you have a new chip, you have all these new things, and you have a smaller battery. I mean, you're gonna get not as good battery life if you had a phone with less, that was less powerful and had a bigger battery. And I kind of allude this to the fact with the iPhone 6 Plus and the 6s Plus. The iPhone 6 Plus had a huge 2900 mAh battery and it was very underpowered. But then when they upgraded to the 6s Plus, it was way more powerful, but they put a smaller battery in, and they kind of did the same thing here. I'm going to go out on a limb and say next version of the phones, next year's 2019 iPhones, they might go and decrease the battery again down to 2600 mAh. And I get really salty when they do that, because with cameras and everything, I mean, you don't use a camera every day most likely, and cameras are so good. Like if you give me like an iPhone 6s camera, I'll still like be okay with it. But with battery life, I mean, that's a main part of the phone, and you really depend on that. And by it going down like this, I mean, I'm just kind of curious on what's going to happen in the future. And I think phone manufacturers should really go out, including Apple, they should go and really focus on the batteries a little bit more and kind of increase it and go from there. That's the one main gripe I have with this phone. I mean, you're spending more money. The iPhone XS is worth more than the iPhone 10, but you're getting a smaller battery. I mean, I could talk about this forever, but that just kind of rubs me the wrong way. Now, some other notable things to note. Like I said, the multi-core score did go up, which was super awesome. I mean, I was expecting that. It has an extra gigabyte of RAM, but that's really only good if that kind of pertains to you. The cameras are very good. You still don't have a headphone jack. Face ID, apparently people have said it's a lot better. For me, I mean, I think it's the same. I think I've gotten uglier over time, so Face ID has a harder time picking me up, but I don't think Face ID has increased that much. Maybe a little bit, but I think it's kind of like the placebo effect or whatever that is. It's like where you think it's faster, but it's not. I think that's kind of what's going on here, but maybe I will say it's not slower than Face ID, but I just don't see that humongous of a difference really. You still have wireless charging, you still have the True Tone display and all these different things. And this phone also is IP68 dust and water resistant up to 2 meters for 30 minutes. So this is a pretty big increase from the last year's IP67 dust and water resistance. So pretty much if you drop your phone in a pool or something, you'll be perfectly fine. On the iPhone 10, you might have a little bit more of a problem, but on the iPhone XS, you'll be fine. Just kind of rub it off and you'll be good. So overall, should you go and update to the iPhone XS? Now, if you have unlimited money to spend, go for it. I'm not going to stop you. It's a very good upgrade. You get a better camera, better performance, all these things. But if you're even in the slightest hesitant, like if you have an iPhone 10 or even an iPhone 8 or 8 Plus, I would say there's really not that big of an increase. Maybe from the iPhone 8 Plus, it's a pretty big jump because you're getting, you know, the extra gigabyte of RAM, a better camera, and different things like that. But what I will say is, if you have an iPhone 6, an iPhone 5S, an iPhone 5, iPhone 4, or 6S or whatever, and you plan on upgrading, I will say that yes, the jump from going from an iPhone 6S to an iPhone XS will be humongous. You'll probably not even know how to use this phone. It's so fast, and it's going to be a humongous upgrade. But also going from an iPhone 6S to an iPhone 10 is also like a humongous upgrade as well. So you don't have to necessarily get the latest and greatest. You don't have to get an iPhone XS. You can go out and just get an iPhone 10 and you can still be perfectly fine, and you probably wouldn't even notice the difference. So what I'm trying to get at is, yes, the iPhone XS is a very good phone, and if you have the money to spend, go for it. It's better than any other iPhone right now, but I don't necessarily think it's worth the money, if that makes any sense. It was an upgrade for sure, but I don't think it was the biggest upgrade. I don't think it's everything they could have done. I think the battery does rub me the wrong way. I think them taking out the dongle in the box is kind of weird, and I think them increasing the camera to make it better, I mean, I'm all down for it, but I just think it's kind of weird that they couldn't make the last year's cases fit on it. I don't like it for petty reasons, but I pretty much told you everything you need to know about it. And like I said, I think an iPhone 10 is a pretty big upgrade from an iPhone 6S, even an iPhone 7 or 7 Plus. So you can always get them used. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to get an iPhone 10. I will see if Amazon has any iPhone XSs for sale, and I'll go link that in the description as well. You might have to wait a little bit, but I'll link them there so you guys can get them from there and help support the channel at the same time. If you guys have any questions or anything like that, leave it down in the comment section below. Hit that like button, but definitely hit that subscribe button. I'm going to be doing a lot of comparisons between the iPhone XS and the iPhone, all the other iPhones. Speed tests, camera tests, all these things. So pretty much within like a week from now, you're gonna have all these videos and you're gonna actually feel like you own the phone. That's how much you're gonna see me talk about it. But I can't wait to drop those. If you guys have any questions, like I said, leave it in the comment section below. But please hit that subscribe button. We're trying to grow this channel out a lot. I'm trying to get to 100 by the end of this year. It might happen, it might not. But if it could happen, I will literally be the happiest little girl in the world. So let's try to make that goal happen. Check out the links in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, all that stuff is down there. I would really appreciate if you guys could check it out. But more importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.